Victoria, you might have seen the headlines today. It's relaxing its lockdown. It's dropped the curfew. Yippee. And I'm thinking, yeah, but this is still, after many months, the world's toughest lockdown. You still can't leave home except for work or emergencies. Kids can't go to high school. Retail shops and restaurants can't have customers, not inside. Churches can't even open their doors to worshippers. And there's a lot of stress around. They can't even open their door to one. And all this, when new infections today in Victoria, just 5. Just 5, and still this lockdown. What is Premier Daniel Andrews trying to achieve here? Well, the Health Minister who last week sacked herself, Jenny Mikakis, had a theory today. Apparently this is no more about just lowering the curve. Weren't we told all that? No more about just getting the numbers low enough for hospitals to cope. No, said Mikakis, I'm so pleased to see how low the numbers are, she tweeted. I'm so proud of Victorians, so grateful for the sacrifices. We're well on the way to eradication. Oh, thanks for telling us. Victoria's now going for total eradication. That's now the strategy? Oh no, said the Premier today.
No, it's not. I've answered this question many, many times. That is not the strategy.
Well, actually, it sure as hell looks like it. New South Wales hasn't eradicated the virus. It's pretty open. But Victoria now, with just 5 new infections today, is going to have Melbourne stay mostly shut for another 3 weeks at least, no matter what the distress. How many Victorians still put up with this madness? I mean, it amazes me. Can't they see this is crazy? I mean, the Premier yesterday saying, good news, we're easing the bans. You can now fish in Melbourne. You can go down to an outdoor swimming pool. And they were never dangerous anyway. And you can walk too. But you cannot golf, apparently, compared to swimming and walking and all that kind of stuff and fishing. Golf is the one thing that's apparently lethally dangerous. Got to ban that. You can have 5 people inside building your house. But you can only have 1 person in the garden outside, where it's actually safer. How does that figure? And why are people in the Victorian countryside, out in the open air, walking by themselves down a country lane, hundreds of miles from the nearest infected person, because there's almost no virus out there, why must they still wear face masks? Does anyone still believe this rubbish? And the only way I think that this dangerous Premier gets away with it, I think, is that he and the media have scared people stupid. Because get this figure. Around Australia, 7.5 million tests have been done on people. People usually thinking, oh, I might have the virus. I might have, you know, got coronavirus. I'm feeling a bit sick. I've got a cough. I better get tested. But do you know how many turned out really to have the virus? Of those 7.5 million tests, just 1 in 250 people really did have the virus. Only 1 in 250 people who thought they might be sick, better get tested, actually were. I think we're suffering from a case of galloping hypochondria. Joining me to discuss the politics of this pandemic are Michael Kroger, former Victorian Liberal President, and Steve Conroy, former Federal Labor Minister. Steve, how do you explain Daniel Andrews still locking down Melbourne when Victoria's just 5 new infections today?
Well, one really good day is not a reason that you could suddenly throw away and potentially risk all of the hard work that Victorians have done. So I would probably say, yeah, it's fantastic that we get down to 5. I've always believed that the rolling average of 5, 14 days was going to be very tough to achieve. Few cities the size of Melbourne around the world have been able to achieve that. And I would hope that when it comes to a final decision, hopefully within the next few weeks, a little bit of flexibility based on the new data, based on where the clusters and how the clusters are occurring. Because an average is a very blunt instrument that can be distorted easily by one outbreak.
Steve, it's gone up 11, 12, 5. I mean, I don't know, Michael Kroger, how do you explain a massive lockdown at such a horrific cost? So you get doctors complaining that people are now not getting checked for heart conditions, for instance, cancer conditions, that turns up, mental conditions, and yet it's in lockdown. How do you understand this?
It's pretty easy to explain. Andrews has survived the second outbreak, but he wouldn't survive a third. So he's banking on the fact that in November 2022, more than 2 years away, Andrew, when there's the next election, people largely have forgotten what happened in September, August, October, November 2020. They'll have forgotten the detail. Of course, they'll remember there was a lockdown and people lost their jobs, etc., but they'll have largely forgotten the few weeks, the lockdown, etc., given that it's 2 years away. That's what he's banking on, and he's banking on the fact that might have got away with this one, but if there's a third wave, I'm a goner.
What I don't understand, though, Steve Conroy, is that what really counts is people dying, not people getting sick with sniffles, dying from this. Now, today, 3 more deaths. Almost no one cares anymore, it seems. All of them people in aged care. Why is there no curiosity now about people dying? Why does no journalist ask the Premier, didn't hear one? Why are people in aged care still dying? What do you think's going on?
Well, I think the inquiry's final statement very much was a bad sign of where this inquiry is headed for the government. I think the statement that the government has responsibility for 720 or 30 now, I think, deaths, and the inquiry very much pinned it on the government's management. That is a very bad sign. Your point is right. The aged care sector wasn't prepared as people believed it was going to be.
But they're still dying. This is my point. Survive. They're still dying. So my question is, no one seems to care anymore. It's like we've crossed the Rubicon. Well, they're just old people. They were all just in aged care. So let's move on. What's the infection rate today? That's what people seem to be saying. No, but I don't hear any questions about this. Michael Kroger, no questions about, look, are these people who... Is this because we still haven't shut off aged care facilities? Is it because people are actually just dying of old age? They happen to have once got the virus, don't still have it. I mean, what is it? Is it still getting into these these aged care centres?
Well, we know it got into aged care because of the incompetence of the Victorian government, but people aren't so focused on the death rate because the easing of the lockdown depends on the infection rate, not on the death rate. So everyone's focused on the infection rate because we've got this 30 to 50, we've got the 0 for 14 days coming up. That's why people are focused on that. So what we know, by the way, is that Ardent Leisure got fined $3.6 million today in a court in Queensland over 4 deaths at Dreamland back in 2016. $3.6 million for 4 deaths. 760 people died in Victoria. The health minister wasn't even sacked. She resigned. She didn't even need to be sacked by the Premier. That was, fair enough. All these people died. And if I hear one more time, Andrew, what a hard worker Jenny Makakos was,
for goodness
sake,
will
go berserk. You ask any small businessman out there, or woman, any farmer, any person who's an employee about hard work, any Uber driver, any taxi driver about hard work. Well, I'm sure Andrew's people say to me, at least he fronts up every day, to the press conferences, and you see a bit of sympathy.
What?
For $450,000, there'd be a queue of people turning up, Andrew.
I don't get it. Look, if she worked only 2 hours a day but did a good job, that makes much more impression with me than working 12 hours a day and cocking it up. Just quickly before we go, Steve Conroy, Jenny Makakos sacked herself on Friday, said that she didn't agree with what Premier Daniel Andrews told the inquiry yesterday, hasn't explained what she meant. Why is she gone, do you think? And is she the only? Why is she the only Victorian Labor MP with a word of criticism of the Premier?
Well, I think when she appeared and gave evidence that said, I didn't know about it till March, April, May, and then footage turned up of her standing next to Martin Pakula when he announced it in March, I think her days were absolutely numbered. And then the Premier's evidence very clearly pointed that he believed that her and her department were responsible for the failures. So given that she clearly, and she writes this, says, I don't agree with the evidence tendered, she has no choice at this point but to resign, which is exactly what she correctly did. Now she's not been prepared to say what her differing recollections are, but I mean the point at the end of the day is she She was not in charge of making the decision about security guards being put in place. And it's increasingly...
Her department was in charge, Stephen. Her department was in charge.
And it's increasingly clear, Michael, if you read an excellent piece by Sam Maiden today, you will see what everyone has suspected, and that is the Victorian police threw a tantrum and didn't want to do the job.
I think you're right,
Control was taken away from her department at the end of March.
I think you're right. And I thought the inquiry counsel assisting saying today, well, this was a decision no one actually made, I think is overlooking a lot of evidence about the role that Graham Ashton played in this, the then Police Chief Commissioner. And I think the resignation of Jenny McCarthy should be followed in quick order by the resignation of Police Minister Lisa Neville. But anyway, that's just me.
Correct.
Thank you very much, Steve Conner and Michael Kroger.
Thanks, Andrew.